Today's question is, how much does the material of a snare drum affect the sound? In other words, does it actually matter whether you play a steel snare drum or a brass snare drum? That is today's question. And if we want to find out, we have to do a proper and professional test. And that's not that easy. You know why? There are so many parameters that affect a snare drum sound. The head, very important. The dimensions, of course. The tuning, the snare wires, the vent holes, the hoops. You know, a lot of different factors there. And what we need for a proper test is 2 snare drums that are almost identical. Everything the same except for the material of the shell. And let's be honest, who has 2 snare drums almost identical? They just differ in, the material of the shell. Me! Yeah, amazing, right? Yeah, I just purchased another pearl free floating snare drum from, I think, the 90s. Great snare drums. So I got the steel version and I got the brass version, both in 6.5 inch, 14 by 6.5. And I'm using the same snare wires, I'm using the same hoops, I'm using the same head, and I'm even using the same tuning. So, finally, it's time to do a proper and professional test. Here we go. For most drummers, the snare drum is the most personal part of their drum kit. The snare defines their sound the most. And if you ask a drummer about his or her snare drum, I think the first thing you will hear is something about the dimensions. Hey, I'm playing a 14 by 8 inch because I need a lot of punch and I want to tune low, blah, blah, blah. And the second thing you will hear is something about the material, usually. Yeah, something like, hey, I'm playing birch snares because, maple snares sound too warm and I want more attack and that's what blah, blah, blah. Or I'm playing a steel shell because it gives me more low end and more snap than others. Something like that. To be honest, I always had the impression that the material of the snare drum is less important than most people think. But yeah, we're gonna find out. Another reason maybe, the material really defines the look of the snare drum. So I'm pretty sure a lot of drummers buy snares because they look cool, but who knows? But also for me, there are some cliche looks. A steel snare just looks rock and roll and metal because it's heavy metal, It just looks metal. And a wooden snare, stupid cliche, but a wooden snare looks a little more jazzy or something, if you ask me, don't you think? I have made countless great sounding snare drum recordings with both wooden snare drums and metal snare drums. But in my experience, and this is nothing scientific, in my experience, like the greatest tones were mostly with metal snares. So I have the feeling that metal snares have a natural EQ curve that works a little better with most of the stuff that I'm recording, which is punchy sounding snares for rock and metal. But there are other parameters that I think are more important. First of all, there's the dimensions of the snare. I like deep snares. That really helps you to get that sound I'm looking for. The second thing is the head and the tuning. I think those parameters have a much bigger influence on the final sound compared to the material. Yeah, but we will find out. We will find out. The drummer you see is Yo. He's from the band Off Colors that I just worked with. Great band. If you're into modern, genty metal with female vocals, check them out. There's a link below to one of their videos. Cool band. There's also a link to all the microphones and the equipment used for this drum recording in case you like what you are hearing. One more thing before we listen to the A-B comparisons. You remember, if you sign up to my email list, there's another link below, you will get a free, great sounding one-shot sample from the snare you just heard. From the Pearl Free Floating Steel Snare. Great one-shot sample, so if you want that sample, subscribe to my email list. And you will also get a lot of other nice emails from me, and you will see some private beer with Kohle videos where I drink beer. So it's worth, to sign up. And every now and then there's a little freebie, like right now the sample, I have been giving away IRs and, other stuff. Let's have a listen to the first example. This is a snare-only kind of marching thing that he's playing, so we are not distracted by the cymbals or other drums. And I'm switching between the two snares. I've turned off the room mics for this example, so we hear the snare a little more detailed and closer. So we're just listening to the close mics and to the overheads. So, have a listen. Oh wow, this might be closer than you expected, right? This might be closer than you expected. Is there a difference? Of course there's a difference. Of course there's a difference, but it's not that huge. But let me describe what I could hear. So let's talk about the brass snare first. It seems to have a little more highs. It seems to sound a little more open, a little more snappy. And I can hear more of the snare wires for whatever reason. So, a little more open, a little more snappy. Then again, ironically, the ring of the snare drum, the hum, is lower compared to the steel snare. So, the steel snare overall has a higher ring. I actually prefer the ring, the bing, of the steel snare. And overall, it sounds a little darker if you ask me. You hear less of the snare wires, but the initial attack, the initial hit, sounds a little fatter than the brass snare. So let's have another listen. I want you to concentrate on the actual hit of the snare, not on the ring. Let's have a listen to another example. This is a hi-hat groove, and this time I got the room mic slightly mixed in, so it sounds a little more like a final mix. Here we go. I got the same impression, but the more instruments you add, the more microphones you add, and the less you concentrate on the ring of the snare, the more similar they sound. Now, if you ask me which snare do you prefer, I would say it doesn't really matter. They sound both cool. Maybe I would take the steel snare because I prefer the ring a little more, but most of the ring will be eaten up by the guitars later anyway. The difference is so small that I would probably ask the drummer, which one do you prefer? Which one feels more comfortable for you to play? Because both snares are giving me the punch and the attack that I need. And I know I can get a great snare drum sound from both of them. And they don't really have a different character. And that is interesting. That is interesting. Why? What we take away is that the material, at least between two different metal snare drums, does not really make or break a snare sound. The tuning is way more important, and also the head is way more important, and the size is more important. So there are so many parameters. Don't focus on the material. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. I'm hoping to do to be able to get some more free floating snares, so I might do a comparison with whatever. I think they have an aluminum snare, a maple snare. I don't know if they have a birch snare. But it would be cool to check out a wooden snare against a metal snare. Let's see what I can find in 6.5 inch. But yeah, I hope I could debunk the myth a little that the material of the snare drum will change your overall drum sound dramatically. No, it does not. I'm sorry. Still, of course it's important to listen to the details. Don't get me wrong. Details are important. Don't get me wrong. Below, you will find the links to the snares used, the links to the heads used, the links to the microphones used. And of course, I want you to subscribe to my email list and sell your soul to the devil. Or you will automatically get a sample of the steel snare drum. The link to the sample is in the final confirmation mail. Yeah, I got so many emails because people don't read emails. Okay, please read your emails. There's a link, boys and girls. Thank you. That's all for today. Subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment. Let me know how you like this video. Let me know what you want to see in the future. Blah, blah, blah. Ring the bell so you don't miss any videos. That's all for today. I love you all. See you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye-bye.